Wherever you may be, however you may be listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Cardinals on SI Podcast. I am Donnie Druin, live from a very nice and relaxed Peoria, Arizona. The rain over the weekend definitely dropped the temperature down. No complaints from me, saving a little bit of money on the AC bill. Another loss for the Arizona Cardinals. Another week of very frustrating football. They've yet to play a full complimentary 60 minutes. I think that's been a very big product of why the Cardinals have lost 4 straight games. And chat's already popping. Money Mitch, go Bird. Shout out to you. And then John, appreciate checking me out, my man. 31-27, the Indianapolis Colts over the Arizona Cardinals. And I feel like it was largely a game where the Cardinals walked into it as pretty hefty underdogs, but for majority of the action, not only did they look capable of hanging with the Indianapolis Colts, they looked capable of beating them. And we've seen it week after week after week, especially this past month, where the Cardinals are playing good football teams in the 49ers and the Seahawks, and for three and a half quarters, like they're playing okay, decent football. But for whatever reason, they're just not able to get it done at the end of the game, specifically in the fourth quarter, whenever it counts. And I think yesterday's game was a perfect encapsulation of that. I think maybe one of the bright spots for this team comes on the offensive side of the ball. No Kyler Murray, who suffered a foot injury last week. He practiced only one day on Friday. There's kind of a feeling that Jacoby Brissett was going to be the guy. And indeed he was. It was reported Saturday night that he was likely going to start. And I have to say that offense looked different. And I think different in a good way too, whenever you think about how the Cardinals offense and total has looked through the past couple of weeks. But you look at what Jacoby Brissett was able to accomplish: 27-44, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And I think beyond the stats, it was nice to see a quarterback in the pocket who stood there with poise, who delivered with defenders pressuring his face. And granted, I think a lot of it was the overall scheme, the overall game plan of how to attack the Indianapolis Colts with the banged up running back room. It felt like they were going to throw the football pretty decently anyways. But that 44 attempts definitely tells a story of, hey, maybe with or without Kyler Murray in the lineup, the Cardinals may have found a little bit of recipe to success. And like John says right here, Jacoby's actually hitting his open receivers. And it's crazy, John, because the lack of timing Jacoby has had with the starting receivers, it is notable. It's not something to overlook. That's not something to just wipe off of your slate and forget. It was very impressive what Jacoby did. Extremely impressive what Jacoby Brissett did over the course of the 60-minute games, that he was able to let the play develop, made Zay Jones and Michael Wilson look like actual weapons. And that's probably one of the biggest complaints I've seen about the Drew Petzing offenses. It's just Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., and nobody else in the passing game. And sure, like Marvin Harrison Jr. Suffered a concussion like halfway through the game. Trey McBride was continually force-fed the football, which I think was absolutely the right move. But whenever it comes to the overall Arizona's passing attack, guys like Zay Jones, and especially guys like Michael Wilson, who I feel like makes a play every time you throw him the football, they're not really featured. And I think, like I said a little bit earlier, it's a little bit to do with the running back room being banged up like it is. And I think maybe something has clicked whenever it comes to Drew Petzing in this offense, whether it's Jacoby Brissett, whether it's Kyler Murray. Like, we need to see a little less 12 and 13 personnel, a little bit more pushing the football down the field. And we saw yesterday, good things happen whenever you're able to do that. Now, there's going to be a lot of questions on whether or not Kyler Murray is going to be that guy whenever he is healthy. Jonathan Gannon, after the game meeting with reporters, said that Kyler Murray is our starting quarterback. He nipped any of those conversations in the bud. Whether Kyler plays next week against the Green Bay Packers, we will see. They won't hit the practice field until Wednesday. The Cardinals probably aren't going to tell us if he's looking good or looking not good. So we'll have to wait until the injury report late Wednesday night to figure that out. But I think overall, for the first time in 2025, we saw a Cardinals offense that outperformed the defense. And that's crazy to say, considering that the talent level on the defensive side of the ball under Nick Rallis, and obviously under Jonathan Gannon, the head coach too, they held their end of the bargain. For the first time all year, the Cardinals offense held their end of the bargain, and it ended up being the defense that bit them in the behind whenever it came down to it. We'll get into the defense a little bit later. John says, I'm just willing to wait and see if Jacoby can carry this performance into next week and gets a better defense. Granted, if he doesn't even play next week. One thing to add to that, John, is the Colts didn't have a ton of game film on Jacoby Brissett in an Arizona Cardinals uniform. That makes it extremely hard to prepare, extremely hard to kind of get in on his tendencies and really like game plan calls for what they think Jacoby is going to do. I think Jeff Hafley with the Green Bay Packers is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, likely a head coaching candidate next offseason or the offseason after that. I think with Micah Parsons coming to town, they're going to take that game film. They're going to have a much better idea of what it's going to be. And then I think the onus falls on a guy like Drew Petzing to make adjustments from Indianapolis and try to get ahead of the curve so the Packers aren't just teeing off on Jacoby and shutting everything down. Because I don't think the running game gets fixed against Green Bay. It didn't get fixed against the Colts, man. 24 attempts, 88 yards, 3.7 yards per carry. Jacoby Brissett showing off a little bit of the wheels, too. I was kind of impressed with how he was able to move. He's no Kyler Murray. That is for sure. It's just looking at the running back room. Adam Schefter had reported that Bam Knight was going to take a bigger role in the Cardinals offense prior to the game. And I think we did see that he led all running backs in carries with 11 compared to Michael Carter's 9. DeMercado did go out with, I think it was, I forgot what he went out with, but it was the Knight and Carter show moving forward. And Michael Carter, pretty good runner of the football, but I have to say, like, whenever it comes to everything else, like, I'm just not all that impressed with him. I'm not. And, Michael Carter, a pure runner is very, very good still. I mean, he made plays whenever he was called upon running the football, but he's not a guy you can put in pass pro. He's not the greatest route runner. And I think people are now seeing why he was a practice squad running back whenever James Conner and Trey Benson were healthy. That's no slight to Michael Carter at all. I'm a big fan of him as a pure running back, but whenever it comes to everything else, it's pretty easy to see why they prefer DeMercado and even Bam Knight on the active roster. But I think the overall story of the offense whenever it comes to evaluating week 6 was Jacoby Brissett's play and his ability to get guys the ball. And you look at the receiving numbers, Trey McBride with 11 targets, as he should. That should be a thing every single week, regardless of the matchup. Zay Jones, 8 targets, 5 catches, 79 yards. And there were a couple plays that Zay Jones let out there. And even touching on Jacoby's 1 interception, Zay was bumped by a defender running to the flat. Jacoby was already in the throwing motion. And that was just an unfortunate play. So I can't even blame the interception on Jacoby. I think Brissett played a very, very good game. And if he does have to play next week, I think the Cardinals and their fans should be extremely confident in what he can do. And Michael Wilson, 4 catches on 5 targets for 44 yards. He had that big play in the second half to keep the drive going for Arizona. Harrison looked pretty good early on before he suffered that unfortunate concussion. And that sucks, man, because there was a whole storylines about him going back to Indianapolis where his father was a Hall of Fame receiver. And there's a lot of hype around that. And early on, it just felt like a Marvin Harrison Jr. game. It felt like Marv was going to have one of those games. And then to see him exit like he did sucked. He looked pissed off heading to the locker room too. It looked like he didn't want to exit. So very, very unfortunate. And then losing Travis Vokalek, who is okay after suffering a neck injury. You lose Tip Ryman last week. You lose Vokalek now. And I really do think that pitching to hold the Cardinals into an offense where they had to throw the football and they had to throw it a lot. But I don't think that ended up being a bad thing. I really don't. I think the Cardinals can hopefully build off of what worked in Indianapolis and then take that moving forward. Because it's clear as day, the Drew Petzing bread and butter of trying to establish the ball, at least running-wise, it wasn't working this year. It wasn't. Like the offensive line wasn't playing up to par. The running backs themselves weren't able to hit holes. It was all just a mess. All of it. Even in this game where the passing attack took off, like normally, like some teams will try to pass to set up the run. They still weren't able to do it. And I'm not saying they need to only run the ball 10 to 15 times per game, but at a certain point, you have to have that like Bill Belichick adaptability, which has been a buzzword for Jonathan Gannon and his coaching staff since the moment they got in Arizona. They have to have that adaptability. And so far, at least from the offensive side of the ball, they haven't done it. So I'm just really hoping, despite the loss, and yes, it's a black and white league. You either win or you lose. You cannot discount that. But maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something here for the Cardinals to build off of moving into the future despite the loss. John says, yeah, Jacoby literally played for the Colts at one point. I would think they would at least have some understanding of Jacoby and the way that he plays. Counterpoint to that, like that was years ago, man. Like that was just not it's so hard to take that tape. There is some tape you can get from that for sure. But you cannot base a game plan off of that for sure. And I do think it helps that while this was Jacoby's first start, he did work with Drew Petzing during their time in Cleveland. And I think that familiarity with the playbook did help at least a little bit. But just overall, like first start, like lack of reps with the ones, even though he reportedly worked with them all week. But just in general, man, the timing, everything was set up for Jacoby Brissett to not have a good game. And he did. And I think looking at it big picture, I've been very critical of Drew Petzing and his inability to mold the offense to pieces around him. I'm of the belief that great offensive coordinators take what they do and they adjust to the guys that they have at their disposal in order to amplify their strengths. I don't think Drew Petzing does that. I think it's the opposite. I think Drew Petzing is so steadfast in his philosophy, in his system, that these are the building blocks you need to fit in order to play here. We're not going to adjust to you. You are going to adjust to us. And I do think a big portion of Jacoby's success came from Drew Petzing's offense that is built to have, and we just say it right here, built to have a tall, big pocket presence quarterback. I don't think Murray is the quote unquote perfect guy to run Drew Petzing's offense. I don't think Jacoby Brissett either, but I think Brissett very much closer fits the bill of what a quarterback should look like in Drew Petzing's offense. For better or worse, I'm not trying to make anything like that into a bigger deal than it needs to be, but it was clear the play calling from Drew yesterday was vastly different than what we had seen the prior 5 weeks. Vastly different. Juan says, I'm sick of our backups always looking better than Kyler, and excuse always being coaching. It's the same narrative for the past 7 years. Nick says, let's be real. It's over for Murray being our quarterback. And, there's a lot of talk about the quarterback controversy, and it's very understandable. I get it. I think the door is at least open, and this is coming from a Kyler Murray guy. For better or worse, it doesn't look like it's working out. I'm not pinning the blame on Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray has not been the reason why they are 2-4, or they were 2-4 entering this week. He hasn't been asked to be Superman. And so it's really hard to judge his ability to win or lose games based off of that, because the whole concept with the Cardinals, not even Drew, is try to establish the run, play good defense, and don't turn the ball over. So you're not asking Kyler Murray to throw for 300 yards every week. You're not asking him to put the game on his back. And that makes it tough. That makes it tough to evaluate Kyler and whether or not he's really the problem. Now, granted, we have 6 years prior to 2025 of knowledge whenever it comes to that. And it's just, there's so many working factors going into a big decision like that. I don't know if I'm ready to have Kyler Murray sent away off of this football team after 2025. Because it feels like he's going to be one of those guys that just lands in another system, and he just needs that fresh start to wipe the slate clean, and needs to get with the guy who actually knows how to maximize him. And then he's just going to take off from there. You see that a handful of times in the NFL. I've seen people make Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield comparisons and all that stuff. Maybe, but at least in Arizona, keeping a scale on what 2025 looks like the rest of the way. I think if Kyler doesn't go next week, Jacoby starts. And if Jacoby Brissett has another good game entering the bye week, you at least got to have that conversation. If you are serious about winning football games in 2025, in a year where you were expected to make the postseason, you at least have to have that conversation of who gives us the best chance to win, because we see it and we hear it every offseason, every training camp. Guys are competing for the roles. Nobody's role is defined. If Jacoby Brissett operates the Cardinals offense under Drew Petzing better than Kyler Murray, you at least have to have that conversation. Now, we'll see what that looks like, because there's a pretty damn good Packers football team coming to town. Micah Parsons is probably going to be in Jacoby's ass every other play. Like I said, Jeff Hafley, one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. Like, if Jacoby has to go again, we will see exactly what the Cardinals have up their sleeve. And that's both kind of exciting but scary at the same time. So, Arturo, thanks for checking us out, my man. I feel like Will Hernandez back is a good upgrade. Our line looked good, helped JB sit in the pocket to make sharp and important third down passes. I completely agree. The emergence of Will Hernandez has been so crucial for this team. So crucial. Even the last week, in his limited snaps for the offense, it was night and day better. And I'm not going to sit here in front of you guys and slander Isaiah Adams. That's not what I do. But like, Will Hernandez is like such a necessity for that Cardinals offensive line. It's so blatantly obvious how much better he makes things. He's beloved in the locker room. He's a tough dude. Before he got hurt, he was arguably their best offensive lineman. And so to see him return from such a major knee injury with the ACL, and to see him play at the levels he has already off of the bat, I think that's very exciting. And we'll see what happens with Evan Brown at left guard. I'd be curious to look at the metrics, especially Pro Football Focus, to see what does or doesn't happen with him. But at least the right guard spot has been solidified, because Isaiah Adams simply just was not what the Cardinals thought he was. And that's okay. Like, it was going to be his first year starting. He was a second-year guy. He filled in rotationally with Tristan Colon last year whenever Will Hernandez did go down. And the Cardinals had a lot of hope in him. And I was told by a source, if you listen to the show, I was told by a source that Hernandez was returning to the Cardinals whenever he signed with them, under the impression that he would only enter the lineup if needed. AKA, hey, if Isaiah Adams sucks, you're going to be plugged in. Lo and behold, Isaiah Adams did not play good football. Miho was plugged back into the lineup, and they're not going to be looking back. They're not. Nick Ellis says, trade Murray to Pittsburgh. Coleman can get the best out of him. Steelers are a quarterback factory, man. That'd be an interesting one for sure. John says, I don't think that Jacoby is necessarily the answer going forward, but I do think that his performance has shown us that we do, in fact, need to change at quarterback. And I would never try to make massive judgments off of just one game. I try to be a little bit more stoic, even kill, however you want to call it, whenever it comes to things like that, especially at the quarterback position. But like I said, man, like that what we watched Jacoby do yesterday in Drew Petzing's offense, it at least opens the door. It opens the door for us to have these conversations. And if Jacoby somehow balls out again against Green Bay, you're going to have the bye week after that. If Jacoby looks good and the Cardinals offense looks good, you have to have meetings. You do. And then John comes back again. Isaiah Adams just isn't good, and there's no hate to him, just a critique. I would agree. I would completely agree. Corey, shout the Cardinalytics. Check out the podcast. Love those guys, man. Classy Nasty, thanks for checking us out, my man. Corrected this, but Miho always been the one. He has. And Miho always has been the one, and it's been really, really cool to see that reemergence of him. And flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, I gotta say, man, if you would have asked me before the season if I was cool with getting into a track meet with Daniel Jones, sign me up. Sign me up. Colts are a good football team, and I don't know if anybody's noticed. They're 5-1 now. Daniel Jones, for as much as I talked about Jacoby standing in the pocket and making some pretty good throws, Daniel Jones dropped some dimes yesterday in the face of pressure, because like Baron Brown was getting after him, Calais Campbell was getting after him, and Jones just made throw after throw after throw. So like, shout out to him, man. And then I think the Cardinals' inability to stop Jonathan Taylor from start to finish really, really hurt them. You're seeing it on the screen. 21 attempts for 123 yards. 1 touchdown on the day. And Shane Steichen's got that offense rolling, man. Tyler Warren one of the better tight ends in the National Football League, despite his inexperience. He's a little bit different than Trey McBride and what they ask him to do and kind of who he is as a football player, but you do see some similarities there. And it just for a Cardinals defense that I think what's the stat? They're third in EPA in quarters 1 through 3, and then like near the bottom of the league in the fourth quarter. We're talking about quarterback conversations and whether or not we should have them. We need to talk about the Cardinals defense and what is going on in the fourth quarter, because this is now what the sixth consecutive game where the Cardinals defense just has not been able to string it together in the fourth quarter. They just haven't. And for a unit that had potential entering the offseason to be like one of the premier defenses, it's been a little bit disappointing. At least to finish the game, it has been a little bit disappointing because they barely scraped by New Orleans. They barely scraped by Carolina. And you're thinking, okay, like this is going to bite you in the ass at some point in time. It's going to bite you. It finally came back in San Francisco, finally came back against Seattle. And now I don't want to say they're unraveling because they're still playing quality football. But for whatever reason, whenever the clock hits 0 in the third quarter and the number 4 goes up on the scoreboard, it's like all bets are off, man. I cannot figure it out. My first initial thought is maybe the lack of adjustments, because normally by then, like you're out of your game script, you're out of your initial calls, and like you've gotten a good feel of what the other side is going to do. And that's not to say Nick Corrales and Jonathan Gannon aren't making adjustments, but maybe things need to be tweaked, because it's very, very clear that whatever's happening in the fourth quarter or whatever's being game planned for in the fourth quarter is not working. It hasn't worked. It continues not to work. And I'm not sure when that changes. I don't. John says, I think it's just a game. I think this game has shown that it's not all on Petzing. I would agree. I don't think the play calling the last 3 weeks has been terrible. I think Petzing is still on the way out, but I don't think it is all on Drew. Not 100%. Maybe 90, 80, 85, somewhere around there. Mikey Desert Cardinal, thanks for checking us out, my man. The Cardinals need a proven running back like Breece Hall. That was the difference in this game. The Colts had a proven running back, and the Cardinals have bargain bin running backs. I think if they were to make a move, it should be for an offensive lineman. Because even when James Conner was healthy, even when Trey Benson was healthy, they were not able to get anything going. Not in the running game. They for whatever reason, the Cardinals just could not establish the run, and that messed everything up. And I think while Breece Hall would be fun, what holes is he going to run behind? Jonah Williams is still a questionable right tackle. Evan Brown, the jury's still out on him for 2025. I would much rather upgrade the offensive line than try to go get another running back, because the Cardinals running back room, in my opinion, is fine. It's not great. It's not award-winning. It's fine. It's okay. But until we get the trenches figured out, I'm a little bit hesitant to offload some draft capital and what might be considerable draft capital to go get a guy like Breece Hall. Nick L says, I'm over Rallis. Arturo says, it's very early, but where does this loss put us? Is our season over? Where do we focus on for the draft? Defense looks sharp, but we're missing help in the defensive backs. I would agree. It's still early in the year, but after starting 2-0 to drop 4 consecutive games, I don't want to say the season's over, but like the outlook is not good, man. And I don't see it turning around, because they're going to have to go on a run. And I think there's a stat released early last week that said the Cardinals have the toughest strength of schedule for the remainder of the season. And this was the point in time where the Cardinals were supposed to take care of business. They were supposed to be 4-2, 5-1, something like that entering the bye week. So some sort of winning record entering the bye week. It looks like you're going to need a miracle to beat the Packers next week. It really, really does. So is the season over? No, there's still a lot of football to be played. And the NFL truly is a week-to-week league. Truly, truly, truly. I cannot emphasize that enough. It really is a week to week basis. But for 4 weeks now, we have not seen the Cardinals play good enough football. And honestly, you can make arguments for their 2 wins prior to that as well. So, of course, as I think there's some more context to the defensive stuff than offensive issues. I would agree. And I would agree that there's just so many question marks going on right now with this team. It's really hard to like put the magnifying glass on and really focus on one issue. It's tough. It really, really is. Any good wide receivers available? Ooh, John, that's a great question, my man. After watching Zay and Mike, do you guys still think we need wide receiver two help, or do we think the shift in philosophy maybe last week showed that everybody can get the ball? It's just a matter of making that happen. Because there's a lot of conversations around the Cardinals and their inability to have a solid wide receiver under Marvin Harrison Jr. But like for my money, Michael Wilson makes plays every time you throw the ball to him. I don't think they use Michael Wilson enough, and it would puzzle me at least a little bit to go get another receiver unless he's just a burner, unless he's a guy who can take the top off of a defense. Speed alone. I don't think they're correctly using the guys that they have in the room right now, and I'm not sure what acquiring another guy is going to do for them. Mikey says, "Why not upgrade both?" I'm here. I'm here for it. Preach the truth, Mikey. I am absolutely here to upgrade both the running back room and the offensive line. I would for sure prioritize the offensive line at this point in time. Juan says Tip Ryman was a big contributor in the run game. Sucks he's out for the year. He really was, man, especially with the premium pick that the Cardinals did use to take him. He was very, very involved in the running game. And though it wasn't very successful, at least to the point this year before he got hurt, he's still a big part of that. They love to use him as a fullback too. Like he did, I think, a little bit more than like meets the eye for the average fan. That loss did help, but like Vokalek was a capable blocker too. And now, like his health moving forward still remains to be seen. It's a mess, man. It really, really is. The problem with Petzing is that he doesn't know how to use Kyler's skill set. If you put Kyler in Minnesota with O'Connell, he would be a contender. I agree. I agree. But adding to that point, Mikey, I think you put a lot of guys in Minnesota under Kevin O'Connell, and they're going to look pretty damn good. But I do think Kevin O'Connell would play to Kyler Murray's strengths. And I think that's what makes him one of the best play callers in the league. It makes him one of the best offensive minds in the league. And I think you can make an argument that would be the same with a guy like McVay, a guy like Shanahan, a guy like Steichen in Indianapolis. And it's very, very clear what Drew Petzing wants to do. And whether that involves notable wide receivers, whether that involves a quarterback like Kyler Murray, it remains to be seen. But I admittedly so, I would not be a fan of the Cardinals offloading Kyler this offseason, but keeping Drew Petzing and getting another quarterback to work Drew Petzing's system. I think it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. That Drew's offense here clearly isn't working. It's clearly not the definitive answer Arizona is going to need moving forward to be a postseason team. I don't think he's the guy. I also think it's true enough that like while Kyler is not the problem, and he hasn't been a problem, it's probably time to go separate ways for both parties. I think Kyler is probably better off with a fresh start. And I think the Cardinals, after 7 years of Kyler Murray, like we've seen what he is. If for whatever reason, right, wrong, or different, like it's just not a thing here. I would love for Kyler to come back from injury, ball out in the second half of the year, and prove people wrong. Because like I said at the beginning of the show, like I'm a Kyler Murray guy. I really, really am. I think his talent is unquestionable. I think his athleticism is through the roof. He can make throw after throw after throw around the field. It's just with this current offensive staff, it's just not working. It's not. John says, I do think we can still use wide receiver help because this was against a broken Colts secondary that wasn't the greatest to begin with. Fair. I think that's very, very fair. The Packers secondary is okay. So we might see similar results again, but no, that's a really good point. Arturo says, I feel like that is a cherry on top for quarterback talk. I heard wide receiver names. I haven't this year. JB was spreading the ball around to everyone. And it did feel like there was a concise effort to get everybody involved, as opposed to the typical Drew Petzing, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to throw to Trey. We're going to throw to Marv. And that's going to be it. And Greg Dortch might be lucky to get a catch or two. Michael Wilson might get a look or two. But like that's how it's going to be. And for the first time all season, it looked like the orchestra was humming like it should have. The exact reasons why, I can't tell you. I don't know what the game plan was heading into the week. But it looked different in a good way. And like I said earlier, for the first time in 2025, the Cardinals offense was let down by their defense. So that kind of breaks everything down. Recap of the Colts game. If you guys have any more thoughts, drop them in the comments below. I am going to head out, get some more written content done. You can check that out at sl.com/NFL/Cardinals. Yapping has really put a number on my throat today. We'll see you guys a little bit later in the week to maybe break down quarterback controversy, maybe break down the Green Bay Packers. I don't know, but I appreciate everybody for checking us out. And until next time, see you.